Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for this video. If you haven't subscribed, do it now before we get into things, just while it's fresh in your mind. All right. So this is an introduction to the series of Aerospace for BattleTech. All right. Swoosh. What is Aerospace and what isn't it as far as BattleTech goes? So there are some differences on how it plays and things like that, but it is essentially, you can integrate them together. You can have ground combat with aerospace, in space, all different levels, everything.
Yes. But you've got that whole up and down thing.
That's right.
You're scaling up to the big stuff, and then you have to try and scale it down to normal stuff, and it can get a little complicated, but I think they handle it pretty well.
I think one thing though is that I've noticed that a lot of people who have actually introduced aerospace into their games, they tend to think a lot differently, strategic-wise, tactics-wise, when they're building their forces, if they know that aerospace is going to be involved, even if it's just like a little sort of basic fighter and things like that, just because of the way that it works.
Yeah.
You know, and it does add a lot to your games, but like Tarron said, there's some things you got to keep in mind.
There's lots of different terms. There's scaling difficulties, there's timing difficulties, there's a few bits and pieces, but you can take an easy version and just have people pay BV for an aerospace fighter and let it do a strafing run or something like that.
Or the scenario stuff.
You can go a full planetary assault.
Yep.
And it's up to you guys how you do it.
It all depends sort of, how much time off you got, I guess. You can always play it on the Alpha Strike rules, but we're talking about actual BattleTech here. So probably the first thing to talk about is scale.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with that.
That is definitely a thing.
A lot of the ground combat stuff, you're talking, what was it, the maximum for some stuff was like 200 tons, depending on what it is. You've got like large scale combat rated vehicles. They go to like 150 tons
something like that. And your support vehicles can go double that, 500 or 600 tons.
Yeah. Which is a lot of armor and a lot of firepower. They're big. All right, but when we're talking aerospace now, we're talking like fighters, like your combat fighters, and they go up to like 100 tons and things like that. But then you've got dropships.
Yeah, so you've got, before dropships, you've got small craft.
That's right, your shuttles and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, so they don't really take much part in combat, I don't think. Not really. There are some that are combat units, but they're not really a big deal. But the thing is, they have a weight limit that sits just at the corner where dropships start.
Yeah.
And I think there's at least one unit that's a dropship, but it's also a small craft and blah, 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 etc. But you'll see things where small craft is mentioned, that's what they mean. It's like space tugs, shuttles, that sort of stuff.
That's right, yeah. There are dropships that can't actually go into atmosphere.
Yes.
There's different ways of designing them and things like that, so keep that in mind. So they'll have, because it's a lot easier to just ferry people of importance down to a planet using shuttles and things like that. They have, if you have a look, there was a technical readout that came out, jump ships and drop ships or whatever, and it talks about all that sort of thing.
I don't actually have it.
But it's
cool.
It talks about everything in there. But we're talking warships. We're talking big ships. So they can weigh I think the Ghost Bear's Leviathan, what was it, like a million tons or something? It was monstrous. Okay. It was huge. So we've got you've got your standard fighters up to about 100. Then you've got the ones you were talking about. Then you go to like drop ships, which can be thousands.
Yeah, I think they start at 500 and go up to like a couple of thousand, or maybe 4,000 or 5,000.
There's a lot. Yeah, easy. And then you've got there's like jump ships. So that's how your jump ships have drop ship ports. Most of them do anyway. Some of the bigger ones have multiples, so they can carry lots of drop ships. And they have the Kearney Fuchida, I think that's how you say it, drive. It's basically your jump drive. So you can jump 30 light years on a charge and things like that. And some of the big, then they deploy like a sail, a solar sail, which absorbs solar energy, puts it back into the battery. I don't know how long that takes, a while.
Fuel
depending on where you are.
All that sort of stuff.
Yep, and then off you go. You can do another jump. So there are like some of the warships and things like that, they have the jump drives, but they also have like a battery that stores it, so they can double jump, which is pretty handy. Which is good because you got this big warship thing and it moves fast. Yeah. It's hard to get away from them.
So Sana doesn't have any listing for anything except its length and its mass. And its mass is 2.4 million tons.
Oh, God, there you go. Okay, a lot bigger than I thought. There's two versions of it. There's a basic one, and then there was like a big Leviathan, like a warship version that they did. Wow. I think the first one was a transport. I think in the fluff, when they got to the inner sphere, because the Ghost Bears were part of the initial invasion. They were one of the clans anyway, and they did quite well. So when this thing came over, they said, "Oh, let's convert it into a warship now. It's here. Why not? You know, we're all set up. We've got our stuff there. And yeah, why as well?" I mean, that's like a big extreme and things like that. But there's all sorts of things to do. But what's important is that, like, a lot of these big ships, they have a different type of armor and a different type of weapons. So capital weapons and capital armor.
Yes.
We'll go into that later when we're talking about the combat. But just for now, we'll just talk about how some of the rules are a bit different to standard BattleTech. All right. First things first is aerospace units have an extreme range.
Yes, all of them.
Yep.
Without optional rules or anything, that is a set-in thing.
Yep. So if you're playing in space, each hex is about 30,000 meters or
something like that.
It was something like that. It's big. Now, the range obviously is different. So what they do is a weapon will go into like a range category. So if you go medium laser, I think it's that one in particular is medium or whatever. But say I think it's a Gauss rifle or something can shoot into the extreme range.
Okay. Yep.
So it can shoot the longest range and shorter. So you're not restricted to just that size. So short is 0 to 6 or 0 to 12 with the short range capital weapon. So you've got naval PPCs and naval autocannons, big heat and big damage.
Yeah. There's sub-capital weapons as well, and there's also missile. So like the Kraken, the Piranha, those sort of things. We'll go into them when we do combat and equipment, but just know they exist.
So they're like some of those missiles are like a wired one, so they can go and if they miss, they just come around again, and they have armor, so you try to shoot them down.
They'll come back and try and kill you again. It's ridiculously cool.
So your weapon values are fixed as well. So you pick a weapon, say the medium laser or whatever. Now we know on ground combat it does 5 points of damage and things like that. So all the other weapons, because of the way it works, it'll have a fixed damage. So your missiles, for example, like an LRM launcher, say an LRM-20, I think it does a flat 16 or something like that damage, 16 or 12, something like that. So they've sort of averaged it out as to how much damage it can do and just done a fixed thing.
And then you shoot them by the bay, right?
Yes. Yeah. So weapons are put into bays. So let's have a look at say a standard fighter. You've got your nose bay, you've got your left wing, you've got your right wing, and you've got an aft. That's a standard fighter. When you go into bigger things, like your big drop ships, your spheroid drop ships, they've got aft left, aft right, 4 left, 4 right, and so you will be you buy all your weapons and you put them into bays. So there'll be all lasers will be one, and your missiles will be one, and you roll for the bay. The bay will add up all your heat and all your damage. You either hit with that or you don't. So you need to keep that in mind.
Are we confused yet?
But it works. When we go to play it later in the videos and things like that, you'll see. So weapon range brackets are standardized and applied to all weapons equally. The angle of attack from attacker to target may inflict a 2-hit modifier. So we've seen in modern combat, if you're on the 6 of your opponent, it's harder for them they've got to try and get away. You've got like a really good angle and things like that. But shooting on the side, it's the hardest, I think.
It's harder to do because
the speed and all that sort of thing. Yeah,
and you're going this way fast, it's harder to get a shot.
Yeah. And front on, I think, is the worst.
This is versus ground units, obviously, but it's
But shooting other fighters and things like that is the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So large craft group their weapons into bays and make a single 2-hit and location roll. So your little fighters that fly around, you can pick and choose what you want to do. But the big ones, that's it, because that's how they're designed. Which is not such a bad thing, because you've got such a big field of fire. You can get some multiple bays together if you're lucky, and it can do quite a bit of damage.
Yeah.
Damage to warriors creates 2-hit modifiers.
Yes.
Which is nice.
Yes.
And in fact, if you get... So in the standard BattleTech, when you take 20 or more points of damage, you've got to do a piloting check, right?
Yeah.
Your mechs and things like that. With the Aerospace, for every 20 points of damage, it's a +1.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting lots and lots of damage and hits can be a real problem, and that makes sense because it's, you know, they're designed. These things are designed to be flying around and things like that. So they're designed a bit differently. So things are going to work a little different as well.
Yes.
And any successful 2-hit roll that is a natural 12 can cause critical damage.
Which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I never get 12s.
And it's like with normal mechs and things like that, you've got your outer armor and you've got your internal structure. If they do enough, they have like an internal structure rating. So each side, it's not like a tank and things like that where each side has its own little internal structure. You'll have an internal structure for everything. So you've got outer armor from all the angles, and then you've got in the middle. Okay? So that will have a number to it, and if a weapon or a collective group of weapons that all fire as a bay hit a location and they do more damage than that internal structure, there's also a chance for a critical from that angle.
And it overwhelms the integrity. Or
that's
whatever,
right, yeah.
It just
yeah.
kind of does some sort of nastiness.
Yeah, yeah. And you can actually rip your fighter and that apart if you try to do these high G maneuvers, which causes stress and all that sort of thing. So there's all these sorts of things you have to worry about too. And as you take damage, it can cause problems like thrusters on certain sides and all that sort of thing can affect how maneuverable you are. And there's all sorts of things. And if you've got aerospace fighters versus conventional fighters, there's rules for conventional fighters. You say, well, why would you want conventional fighters when you've got aerospace ones that can go into space and do all these sorts of things? They do actually get a benefit if they're in atmosphere. They can't go into space, but if they're in atmosphere, because of the way they're designed, they get some little inherent benefits as well.
They get cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty cool.
What is it? A mech buster?
The mech buster. Yeah.
Just a fighter with a AK-20 on the front.
Yep. And anything buster, really. I mean, 20 points of damage.
It's just a buster.
But yeah, it has a 5 safe thrust, so walk, and an 8 over thrust run. If you over thrust, then there's things like that. But that's boards.
Yeah.
When you're talking like low atmosphere,
that's the other thing is the scale. So you're going with aerospace. You go from space. There's a space map which has is that 30 Ks or something is the size.
Is the size per hex. Yep.
And then you go to a high altitude map where you can have anywhere from sort of space type thing with no gravity effect, all the way down to ground hexes at the bottom of the map.
Yep.
And then you can technically go onto a low altitude map, which is usually just a blank hex map.
Yeah.
But each one of the hexes in that map that you're flying your fighters and things over, your dropships and all that sort of stuff that you're flying over, they are all one map sheet. Yeah. They all represent one ground map sheet. So that's 500 meters across, and then a map sheet's hex is 30 meters across. And that's, hello, buddy.
Hello.
And that's,
Come here, buddy. Yeah.
That's insane. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And you can technically take your guys from, say, a dropship all the way down through the atmospheric rows, down to the ground hexes, land them on a map sheet, and get them into the battle. And it's really, really cool.
I mean, we know that there's sort of orbital drops and things like that. So there's rules for those which we'll go into. You need to be at a certain area. If we're talking like the maps from space to the ground, they have to be at a certain height before you can do it. You can't just drop them whenever. So it's all good.
Go see Mum. Go see Mum.
What's that? You're going to feed me? Okay.
Doesn't involve food. If not, I'm not coming.
So one of the things, line of sight in space.
Yes.
You've always got it.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's space.
There is what they call a screen launcher that I found out about recently, which is quite cool. It's basically a space chaff launcher.
Yep.
But it is the only thing that blocks line of sight in space is a screen launcher. If you don't have one, they can see you.
Yeah.
Friendly units don't block line of sight. Enemy units don't block line of sight. Nothing blocks line of sight except a screen launcher. So put them on your ships.
But you could be creative with like asteroids and things like that. You know, there's optional rules out there, and you can use them or not use them. But yeah, they are very handy to block line of sight because you've got it. And when you're talking like big capital weapons,
they do damage.
They're big. We're talking like 900 points of damage for some of these naval PPCs and stuff like that. Or 600 damage or 60 capital, which is like 600 normal damage.
Yeah, I think it's multiplied out by 10.
10 or something.
I'm pretty sure.
It's like,
but it's ridiculous the amount of stuff that happens there.
Now, obviously, the big weapons have trouble targeting up to a certain tonnage. Of smaller things because they're just too nimble. You know, they're designed for going after other big ships and things like that.
So if you are shooting with capital weapons at fighters, you'll get a modifier that says that thing is too small and fast for you to shoot with this. But give it a crack if you feel like it.
Yeah, true.
And if you manage to pull it off, you will obliterate.
Would you weigh up the cost of destroying like a little fighter to the cost of one giant naval autocannon shell? The quartermaster's like, what are you doing, man?
What are you doing? That shell cost more than that fighter.
But yeah, but a lot of those big ships or whatever, they'll have bays of smaller weapons, of your lasers and things like that don't have those penalties. They're like point defense, things like that. So anti-missile systems still work, but they also other weapons like your small lasers and things like that. They become point defense weapons.
Yes.
So those go against missiles and all that sort of thing. It just changes a little bit there too. So.
And this is just the intro.
That's right. Yeah.
Holy crap.
We will go into more detail about all of this stuff, but just to let you know that we are talking like big ships, big combat. Obviously, there's been naval conflicts and things like that in space, but considering the cost of these things and how long it takes to make them and just the amount of damage that they can dish out, you know, a lot of these units can do a lot more damage than they can actually take.
Yeah.
So they don't really like to have these combats, you know. It's like they just really don't want to press the trigger because once it gets started, it's really bad. But I don't know, it makes for a fun game with stuff blowing up.
Oh yeah.
You know?
And if you can get the models like that Fortress that I've got now, that is quite cool.
Yeah.
With the long tom on the top.
I think they only use that when it's landed. In the fluff it says that, but you could probably use it in.
No, you can only use it when it's landed.
Is that right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But there's for the scale of things, there are 6 PPCs, 2 Act 20s, 5 Act 5s, 4 LRM 20s, 4 LRM 10s, 6 SRM 6s, 8 large lasers, 16 medium lasers, and a long tom in a pear tree. I guess.
I was going to say, it does have a picture.
But that is, I mean, that's an insane amount of firepower. But if you're going up against some of the bigger dropships, that's nothing.
That's right.
If you're going
up
against a warship, that's barely even damaging.
Yeah, you wouldn't go near a warship even with that. You wouldn't.
I'm looking at the Tiamat, which is a 36,000 ton pocket warship. Innosphere designed, and there's a lot of weaponry on that thing.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, I think those ones were designed by the word of Blake when they were doing their big takeover and things like that back in the storyline. They converted all these dropships to have all these capital weapons on them, just as a shock thing because you didn't know. You'd just see a dropship. They don't look any different from the outside. It was just terrible.
You can get like with the the high altitude map goes from space down into the atmosphere and then onto ground. And then once you get into the ground, you go onto the low altitude thing. And there are units that cannot make the transition. If you try and take them lower than a certain point, they're going to have difficulty. Right, so you have to bear that in mind.
Or they just can't do it. They just fall because they're not designed for it.
Yeah, they physically cannot do that without crashing.
Yeah, there was I can't remember the exact name of it, but there was like an Aerodyne shape dropship. It's a fighter dropship. I think it carries like 40 aerospace fighters or something.
Yeah.
But it can't go into atmosphere. It looks like it's designed like maybe it could, but no, it can't. And that's part of the design thing. We'll go into that later on in another video.
Dropships.
Yeah, assault dropships and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, so that sort of thing. But that's a bit of a basic. This is just an intro video. We just want to give you like a taste of just some of the things that we'll be talking about in this series. I sort of feel like we're going right back to the beginning because it is. It's.
I mean, in space, the movement is reworked. There's a whole different thing on how you actually move around and everything. So we're going to have to redo basically everything, and you're going to need a new set of rules for each different type of thing. So it's going to take a little while, and it is a bit complex, but if you can get it like working, then it's really, really cool to add into games.
Yeah. And it's like anything, once you've played a few games, it's still tables, it's still short, medium, long, and Extreme has another, I think it's a +6 or something like that to hit. So it's same, but different. But there's enough difference in there that it's worth us sort of really going into detail about it. And that's what we're going to do in this series. So the next video, we're going to talk about movement. We'll talk about the maps and things like that, how it works. The different unit types and things like that, and how that sort of goes. We might split it up into a couple so it focuses on space and then maybe some ground combat stuff, just so as everyone understands the difference and how it works.
This is probably going to be quite a long series because we're going to have to go through several different versions of basically the same thing.
Yeah. But I think pretty much once you've watched the series, you'll have a pretty solid grasp of how it works and things like that. But as always, if you see something that's a bit different, leave a comment, let us know, we'll address it. It's all good. But
if you spot that we've stuffed something up, and that has happened, it happens a lot, let us know so that the people that are watching that maybe don't know that we stuffed up will know that we stuffed up.
Yeah. But it's all right. We will be doing battle reports for fighter combat. We'll do dropships and warships and all that sort of thing.
Cool.
Oh yeah, got it all ready. So yeah, we'll do that too, and then you can get an idea of sort of how it plays, how it flows.
I might actually have some warships of my own. Ooh. You don't know me.
I thought I did. All right, so that's it. That's it for the intro. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video in the series.
Bye. Guys.